So this is the chest of drawers that I'm going to take down and refinish. I have my regular sander, which is a Bosch Orbital, and I'm going to try this little guy here. The only thing is, you can see the little dust collection here has like an oval exit out of the sander, and I can't hook that to my vacuum. So that's not a good surprise. That's unfortunate. And I have to sand in the house because I can't carry this outside by myself. So I'm going to have to work with that a little bit. Maybe I'll have to hold the edge of the end of the shop vac close to where I'm sanding, so it sucks up whatever doesn't stay in here, because typically they come with a little dust collector, but it doesn't really collect all the dust. But if you can hook it up to your shop vac, that is a perfect way to do it. But I'm going to start off by removing the hardware. And when I'm doing a piece of furniture, I try to log my hours. I'm not perfect at doing it, but I try to. I at least try to put the date that I started. And this particular dresser has to be done by the 25th because it belongs to a customer. And that's how I gauged it. But so I just put the time in and the time out, just like you would if you were working for any company. So this dresser is all wood, and the customer has several pieces that match this. The one thing I will have to do is, I'll show you the hardware afterwards. There are the wooden knobs, very typical, can you see this? Very typical knobs that you would find in these, probably like 1960, 1970, kind of colonial looking. So they look, I haven't taken them all off, I just started, but hopefully there won't be any broken ones or deeply scratched ones. But what I plan to do is put these in a plastic container and use a liquid stripper on them and get the finish off that way. But that's the only thing that I'm going to use stripper on, is the hardware. So we'll keep the screws. So yeah, and so they're in good condition really, but I can see that there's a little bit of rust on them. So what I'm going to do is put them in a glass container and just soak them with a little bit of Goby Gone. Yep. With this, I'm going to put them in a plastic bag and throw some citrus strip in it, which is all I have. So that's what I'm going to use. And we'll see. At least that, I can put downstairs out of the way and close up the bag so I'm not smelling it. I just really don't like chemicals. So I only use them when I have to. So I'll show you that later. Well, and so I'm going to try to work this around. So basically, it's good because I can't really smell anything right now. And I'm going to go and put that somewhere out of. Okay. So you'll all know that I wear protection and all that stuff. And I'm going to start off with an 80 grit on my orbital sander. And I have these because the finish sometimes gunks up my sandpaper, or the sandpaper is still good, but it's just getting filled with all the gunk from the finish. So I can just brush off my sandpaper every once in a while. So it's going to get loud, but I'm going to turn that off. So I vacuum. So it doesn't look too bad, but I just want to clean up any gunk that got in there. And I'm going very, very lightly. I have a light hand even with sanding. It's the same as I do as painting. I'm not a heavy painter, and nor am I a heavy sander. So on this side, and I hadn't noticed it on the other side, these plies are literally coming apart. Like when I put my hand underneath, I can feel that the wood is actually fractured underneath too. So where it's plies, I'm not really sure. Thank goodness it's not, I mean, it's not buckling out here, but it's buckling on the inside. So my plan is to get as much glue in there as I can and put a clamp on it. And, you know, maybe I can put some colored wax or something so it doesn't show as much. And then on the inside, of course, I'm going to have to fix that, but I'll have to get a look at it in a minute. So this is a 120 grit, and I've got the finish off pretty well, and I'm going to have to do some detailing by hand in these corners, but it looks pretty good. And so I'm going to do I just did a finer sand on the panel here, and then I'm going to start doing a little finer sanding with the 120, and I will use my orbital sander. And then lastly, I'll be doing it with a probably, you know, 300 to 800 grit by hand, so I can get a nice smooth finish, because this finish is going to be natural. There won't be any stain on it. But I'll get to that point in a little while and we'll talk about it. Try to get into these corners. Yep. So I already did up here a little bit. So this is 240 and I'm just going easily over the veneer. So this is the back and I'm going to have to do something with this veneer. Find a way to clamp it and maybe fill it. Just, you know, just some of these edges so that they stay intact. I don't think it's bad enough to have to replace the whole thing, but and the owner wasn't thinking of that. Anyway, that wasn't part of the plan. So I'm going to just try and see if I can do some repairs to it. Yep, so I'm going to put some glue in here. And this is old brown glue. I'm going to use it right out of the bottle. Yeah, I don't want to make a mess on the furniture that I just sanded. So yeah. I'll try to get some in there. And we have some over here. No, this isn't, it's the back of the furniture, so basically what I want it to do is not flop around. I'll try to get it intact, and then what I'll do is I'll use some wood filler. I think that's intact, it's just cracked. So yeah, with this side, I'll just fill it up as much as possible. All right. My fingers are frozen. So this client dresser is one that I've been working on. I took the original orangey finish off of it, and of course you realize what you have once you start to remove those finishes. And I don't know everything about wood species, but as far as I can see, I think it's a maple veneer right here, and it's very pink. I can get that white with fine sanding, but in 2 hours it comes back to pink. So I know that the tannins are coming through. Looks like the sides are ash. Very pretty, but doesn't really go with the maple. But you know, they built it with the idea that they were going to tint the entire thing one color. And then the top has some different species, I think. This looks like it could be, I don't know, it could be birch, or it could all be hickory, variations of hickory. Probably another piece of ash right here. And this, you know, this side of the veneer, same thing. Lots and lots of bleed through. This whole panel, this panel on the inside was very buckled, and I repaired it as well as I could, and still on the outside it still has some splitting in it. You can see it right there. And so if I was staining it or putting some kind of colorant on it, I could hide that, because I don't want to be squeezing on that because the inside was so buckled. I think really what it actually needs is a new piece of the sidewall with the veneer over it, but the client isn't going to invest that much money into this piece, so we kind of have to make good with what we have. So my plan is to do fine sanding over again, and then do a quick coat of shellac to seal in those tannins, and then we'll see what we have from there. I'll send the customer a picture and show him all the wood variations in the colors, the pink with the green, and see if he wants that, because at that point I can still add some tint to it to take away that pink at that point. And so that's the plan. We'll see. So this is one coat of shellac, and I've been lightly sanding it with 800 threads. I don't want to add color to it. all I wanted to do was seal in all the spots where the tannins were coming through to kind of stop it from coloring up. So I think that worked. And I'm using an 800 grit because I don't want to remove my shellac. So wow, it has a really nice soft finish on it. So this was actually challenging, not physically, but because each time you sand it, within 2 hours those tannins come seeping through. So what I had to do was a fine sanding, a heavier sanding to get rid of the tannins, the pink of the tannins, and then a light sanding, and then put on the shellac, a coat of shellac as quickly as I could. So I was kind of working in the dark, but that's what it took to stop that pink. So, yeah. I might do one more coat of shellac if I have to. It looks like there's a few spots where I could. Yeah. Yep. I can hear the generator going. That's Pisgah. And here's the barn. And the van belongs to the carpenter, Rick. I could use my neighbor's stairs, but I usually walk. I can hear his music. Hey, how's it going? Oh, it's warm.
What's that?
It's warm.
Yeah, I had the heat run for a while. Yeah, very convenient.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Not too much. Just taking a little break.
All right. Getting some stuff on film, I see.
Yeah. Getting you on.
Ah.
So that's the rest of the barn.
Well, the bottle was
Some of the stuff that I'm working on. Well, that's good enough for right now, and that's going to continue to harden. But it's pretty much shaped in. I can fine sand that a little bit, and by the time it's all completely hardened, I don't think you'll have to worry about that edge chipping anymore. Cool. And so I took it out for a final sand. I used my orbital with a 120 grit, and then right now I did a little bit with the 120, 180 with the sponge. So it took a little bit. There were a few circles from the sander, but those have come off with the sponge. And so right now, I don't know if you can see them in the sunshine, but just want to make sure that these are very, very smooth. So that's what I'm doing right now, is fine sanding it, trying to get out any ridges that were left by the orbital sander. And so that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go over. So we want to be careful that these stay exactly the same as what they were from the factory or whatever made it. I'll be really quiet, and you can I'm just going to do this side so that you can hear the difference in the sanding. Here I have linen. And boy, that goes over really smoothly. So the finish that I'm using is a water-based clear coat that I love. It's my favorite from General Finishes. It's called Flat Out Flat. And there are lots of good clear coats, but this is my favorite. If you can see, but it has a white consistency, and it dries clear. And I use brushes, and I use a very dense, small roller. So I'm using the 4-inch. Actually, I'm just going to dampen it. It's not wet, it's just dampened. So I'm just going to keep the brushes handy. I always start in the middle. Now, granted, you have to be a bit quick with this, and that's okay. Not quick enough to make bubbles, but just quick enough to catch the wet drips on the edge if there are any. And sometimes I go forward, and then after I go forward, I do some cross motion. And then I finish with a straight up and down. That way I'm not leaving any streaks. Now, if you had a heavier hand with this, you would have a bit longer open time, but I work in very light strokes, and so my open time isn't quite as long, really just like minutes, if anything, you know, maybe a minute. And I just go over it with my brush. I might see something that appears to me to be a little light spots, but it's probably just drying, and I don't want to be tempted to take my brush or my roller and go over it again. I want to wait until it's all dry, and once it's dry I can go over it again, and I'll do a light sand, probably only 800 again. Very, very, very light sand, and it's not even really a sand, it's just enough so that if I see any unusual spots or anything, that going over it will take that away. So I'm going to start the drawers. And I'm not going to have you suffer through me doing all the drawers. I'll just start on one. Okay, so I have a few spots that I have to fix. I have to fill in a few places on the drawers. So with that one light coat of clear finish, I'm going to try to, what I'm going for is, you know, a few basic color, and I'm adding it to my water so it's really thin. All I want is a little basic, almost like a taupe color. Oh, and so I have a few different colors here. Let's see if I can actually just wet my brush a little so that I'm not carrying paint from one can to the next. A little bit of drop cloth, a little bit of French linen, which is kind of a very light gray. Let's see what we get with that. This can of coffee bean is really old, very thick. Therefore, I'm not that worried about getting a little bit of other color paints in it, because I wouldn't be using it on an entire piece of furniture anyway. And so, you know, I have some taupe, and then I have just a little bit of the light color there with the French linen and drop cloth. And I'm going to rinse off my brush again. And I'm going to get a very tiny brush. It's hard to do this with holding the camera and looking at the same time. And so here I'm going to go for adding a little bit of red. And some Colonel mustard. A little bit more coffee bean. And so I'm getting a brown. And let's try that with a tiny brush. I probably need to not be doing this on my phone. Holding the phone in one hand and a brush in the other. Are you seeing this? Sorry. So it's not too bad. I mean, see, there is other discoloration along that part of the board. I believe it's white oak. So it actually looks better off camera. It doesn't look quite so gray as it does right here. So I think that's as good as it's going to get. And this is a dent. I didn't fix it because, you know, it's rustic. So all in all, not too bad. At least you can't really tell there was a crack there.